Hi friends and welcome back. I am so excited that you are here with me. I am going to be working in my grid journal today and I wanted to take you along for the journey. So grid journaling really is one of my favorite techniques that I've been using as a great warm-up really to really get the creative juices flowing and to really get myself in that creative mojo. So if you haven't checked it out already, make sure to check out the free course from Color Crush Creative. Kelly put together a wonderful course that is really full of inspiration. So I started out here, I wanted to just get some marks down on the page, and I started with my water-soluble Lyra Graphite Pastel. And now with a wet paintbrush, I am moving that pigment around on the page. This is actually one of my favorite things to do. I love to see how that pigment moves and reacts with the water. And I like to put that color down in even the squares that don't have any marks originally. So this helps you to get variations within the tones that you're getting. Some are lighter, some are darker. And depending on how hard you pressed with the Lyra pencil in the first place, is also dependent on what those marks are looking like. I like to start out with my spreads having a little bit of an idea kind of what colors I'm wanting to use for that spread. I'm open to having things go wherever they go after I get started, but it really helps me to kind of choose at least a base color to get going. I find that a limited color palette actually works the best for me in the long run. Otherwise, it's very easy for me to get overwhelmed and to start overthinking things of what things should look like. So I added in some loose pencil scribbles, and now I added in some Stabilo Woody, just a little bit there. I wanted to bring in some of that darker black onto the page. So the Lyra is great, but it is more in those gray tones, and so I wanted to bring in the dark tone as well. This is a gelato marking tool here, and it's very creamy, and I love the way also that it reacts with water. And so I put down just a little bit in a couple of the squares. My plan is to bring that pigment across into other squares as well. And so I don't need to put it in every square to start with, but rather just in a couple and then see how that can carry across the page. I'm gonna bring in the chartreuse color now and kind of get a complementary color scheme going. I used to avoid doing reds and greens together with the fear that it would look too Christmassy, but I feel like I've really come into this color scheme lately, putting these tones together, and I think almost going more into a red-orange range rather than a pure red, and also adding some mustard and some yellow in with it as well has really helped. So I'm being really loose with my movements right now, loose with the paintbrush, and I'm just loading it with water and moving that pigment around within the squares. I like to take a kind of a step back in between doing things and kind of evaluate what needs to happen next. I want to be open and I want to be very playful with my movements, but it is nice to be able to just kind of evaluate what's going on. I'm adding in some spray paint now. It is a water-based spray paint, and it is very low odor, so it's safe to use indoors, which is very nice. This red color is very vibrant and I like it. I'm being careful as I use it because it acts like any other spray paint where it would go all over the place. And so especially with the red there, I just wanted little kind of dribbles that came out of it. And so it definitely takes a little bit of practice to get it to behave like you want it to. And so I suggest, if you're going to do it, to test maybe on another sheet of paper first. But I really just liked that splattered look, and it's kind of volatile, so it's not always going to do exactly what you want it to do. As some of those yellow ones, you can see it kind of came out more in a blob than I was expecting it to, but that's kind of the fun and unexpected part, to just kind of learn to go with the flow and whatever comes at you. I want to move some of that around. I don't like the kind of blobs that it left with some of them, and so I'm just taking my paintbrush and moving that around, making some random marks, and seeing where else I can go with this color scheme. I now want to bring in some collage elements, and so I looked through some of my scrap papers, and I'm going to pull out a few that I think would go well with the spread that's already starting. This is from an old ledger paper, and it already had some green marks on it, it looked like, and so it's a perfect one to kind of put in. I'm ripping those down to size and kind of just playing around with where I want the placement before actually gluing it down. I like to switch up the order that I do collage on the spread. A lot of times I will do it first and then build layers over top of it. But it's also really fun to do some of your painted layers first and then bring collage in, because it can act as kind of a place for your eye to rest, a bit more negative space, if you will. I'm going to continue layering up some of that collage, and a lot of times if I place a piece in one part, I'll actually add a friend to it, so to put more than one piece together. Sometimes I feel like this just draws your eye and your interest a little bit more. If you haven't already, make sure to go check out my new free course. It's called Fringe Flipbook, and I think you guys are really going to love it. I had so much fun putting it together, and it is so jam-packed full of content and fun things for you guys to do. So it has a lot of new techniques and allows you to have self-expression while also having fun textural elements. So I'll put that link in the description below, so make sure to go sign up for that. It's free if you haven't already. Also in the description below, I try to put where I get my supplies from. So if you have any questions about the supplies that I have used, you will most likely find the link down there. If I missed anything, please make sure to let me know, and I will try to find that for you. Also, if you haven't already, make sure that you're subscribed to my channel so that you are notified when new videos come out. I always love to bring text in for my collage. I feel like I like to look at the text as just like another pattern that I'm using. And so I think it is really great as a black and white pattern. It goes really well if you want to put it into the background, or if you want to make the text more of a focal element. Usually when I bring in a different element or new element, I like to do it in more than just one square. I like to do it in at least a couple spots around the page. I feel like this brings cohesion, and not just in the one box alone, but also as the spread as a whole. It makes everything feel more cohesive and put together. I'm now using my fingers to bring in some white gesso, and I'm just kind of blurring those edges, a little bit of some of those collage pieces. I want everything to flow and kind of go into the background a little bit. I don't want anything to just look like it was placed on top as an afterthought, but rather everything to look integrated and cohesive with each other. My finger is one of my favorite painting tools, especially when it comes to this stage with the white gesso. I feel like you can really smudge it in nice and get a preferred look out of it. I want a little bit of a different look now, so now I'm bringing in a dry, small brush and just brushing in some of that white gesso into the spreads. I want to bring in some more of, bring back in some more of that negative space. So if you ever feel like your squares or your spread in general is getting a little bit too busy, think about how you can bring some of that negative space back in. Sometimes the blank space or the empty space is really what can draw our eye in a design. So if there's too much going on, our eyes don't know what to do or where to look. And so to bring some of that calmness back in can be very important. And that doesn't always have to be just with a white gesso. You could do that with another color as well. You could do it even with black to bring in some more of that blank space, or if you choose a different color to be your neutral, you can do that as well. A tan or a cream would work very well, but you could do it with a brighter color as well, and to leave it more of a bigger space that's more plain. I'm bringing out some of these handmade painted tapes that I had made a while ago, and I had just made these with masking tape, and I think I had extra paint left on my palette, and so these then are the perfect tapes to bring into your work later that are already pre-decorated. So they're like your own custom washi tape, and I forgot that I even had them in my stash, so it was a happy discovery when I found them again, and I thought that they would work really well with this color scheme. Also, the masking tape that I had used when I create these has a little bit more of a toothy texture than some of them do, and I like the way that that makes it feel a little bit different than the page that's behind it. So the pages in this journal are very smooth, and so the toothy gridded texture a little bit makes things a little bit different. So I love to look for how I can use different textures in my artwork, and even in a journal like this where it is all flat, like I am collaging, but I'm not adding anything that's going to have too much bulk to it. Just in this journal, I want the spreads to all just be flat lays, and so finding different ways to add in that texture can be really important. So it can just even be the feel of the materials we use, or even the finishes, like if it's going to be shiny or more of a matte appearance. That all makes a difference. So sometimes if your work is looking a little too stagnant and flat, one of the things that we can do is try to just change up some of those elements. So if you're using all matte colored paints, try to bring in one that has a bit of a sheen when it's dry, or bring in some fabric scraps into it to bring a little bit of that texture into it. So just think about trying to change up some of those elements, and that can be just the answer that you need. I wanted to bring in back in some of that bold, dark red color. And this red by Golden is one of my favorite reds. I think even though it's a fluid paint, it's not as transparent as a lot of the Golden fluids are. I really like the way that it looks, and I think it's the perfect thing to add that punch back in to these little grids that is needed. So I'm just using this little silicone brush tool and using that to apply the paints down. I really like to experiment with different tools to even apply your paint. So you can use paint brushes or this little silicone brush. There's the catalyst tools. You can use palette knives, or you can use really unconventional tools that you find for mark making as well. So don't limit yourself just to the standard like paintbrush. Really try different things and see how you can achieve different looks that you want to in your work. I'm bringing in some of this really yummy rust color, and I think it will just kind of tie the yellow and the red together and really soften some of those edges. I'm being careful as I'm going along to not cover up all of the white space. That's just a personal preference. It's very easy for me to end up covering the whole square, or if I'm working in a journal, to cover up the entire page. And sometimes that is the look that you want, but I like the look of that background coming through and having those negative spaces for your eye to see. So that is a very conscious effort as I go on, that I'm not covering all of those up. And some of that wet paint, I'm now taking a little wooden skewer and mark making right in it. You kind of get the resist look by pulling some of that paint away. It does work a little bit better if the paint that you applied is a tiny bit thicker and you want it to still obviously be wet to be able to mark inside of it. I think this spread is really closing in on the final touches here. I think there's a couple different things that I could have done at this stage. I could have brought out some of my marking pens and made some art marks. I think that would have been very effective, especially if I had brought out my white fluid pen and made some marks that way. What I ended up deciding to add some texture and some marks into it is this drywall tape. It's one of my favorite supplies. It's find it at the hardware store, and the backing you take off, and then it's adhesive on the front, and you put it down. I feel like it creates this really fun texture and marks within your page. And I'm just tearing these into random shapes. I don't want anything too perfect. You could also cut this if you wanted more perfect shapes, but I really want that organic feel to it. And so I'm just adding this in a couple of the different squares across the page. The marks as you go along tend to get covered by the layers, and I think that is what is so yummy about it, the complexity of all of those layers put together. And so sometimes when you reach the final stages here, you want to bring back in some of those marks, and that is okay to do. I never try to just like trace over exactly what I had done before. I feel like that can end up looking very contrived, and it kind of takes away from the organic feeling, but rather just make new marks that can kind of accentuate in that area. This is a black China marker, and I'm bringing in just a few little bolder art marks here. I liked the bold black that we brought in at the beginning, and a lot of that did get covered up, and so I want to bring some of those elements back in, something that's a little bit bold and a little bit harsher than the soft edges that I created when I blurred the paint with my fingers. So I'm being cohesive with the marks that I'm doing, but it does not need to be the same in every single square. You do want to have that little bit of unexpectancy as your eyes travel across the page, of finding different things as you go along. But if you had a different element in every single square, it might feel a bit too busy. So as you can see, I'm bringing in those little dash marks a couple times across the page, some circles and some different things. And as you can see that I tilt my book up here, this is just me kind of taking a step back and looking at the page from a different perspective. And sometimes even at this point, it's good to walk away or turn the page and come back to it later with fresh eyes, and to really, that can give you a clear picture of if you need to add anything else, or if your nose has just been too close to the page the whole time. It's easy for things to get carried away and a bit too busy. So I'm adding in some of these final little marks in some of those bigger areas that had a solid color. My white correction pen, I really love the bold white marks that I can achieve with using this pen. I really enjoyed the way that this spread turned out today. It is so fun to work in my grid journal. Again, if you have not checked out that free course from Color Crush Creative, please go do so. It is full of inspiration, and I know that you guys will love it, and you'll want to get started on your own grid journal right away. If you need a little template to help you get going, I will put the link in the description below. That's a free template that you can print out that will help you to draw your grids on your page. I hope that you guys loved watching and creating along with me, and I hope that I will see you next time in the next video. Have a good one.